Welcome to this special edition of the LINBIT community meeting. Today we're going to have a panel discussion about the recent changes at VMware following its acquisition by Broadcom. Whether you're overseeing a large-scale cloud infrastructure or managing virtual machines for a small business, understanding these changes can be critical for your organization's success. Here are just some of the changes Broadcom has decided to implement since acquiring VMware. They're switching from perpetual license model to a subscription model. Many VMware software solutions will no longer be available as a standalone point solutions like free ESXi, and instead will only be offered as part of the VMware Cloud Foundation or VMware Sphere Foundation, vSphere Foundation. VMware partner incentive programs also ended February 4th of 2024, and the replacement Broadcom's Advantage Partner Program is by invitation only. So we have witnessed the enormous backlash this generated in the press for VMware and Broadcom. And in today's discussion, our expert panelists will break down these changes to VMware and we'll explore what these mean for the bottom line, the future of your virtual environment, and how you can best navigate this evolving landscape. So joining us, we have four expert panelists today. First is Alberto Picón, who is the principal technologist for Cloud Edge Engineering at OpenNebula. Welcome, Alberto.
Hello, good evening, good afternoon.
Next, we have Giles Sirett joining us. Giles is the CEO of ShapeBlue, the CloudStack company. Hello there, Giles.
Hi, Michael. How are you doing?
Pretty good. How about you?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
Great. Also joining us today is Marc-André Pezin, the Director Marketing Operations at Vates. Hi, Marc-André.
Hi. Thank you for hosting this event.
Absolutely. And also our final panelist joining us today is our fearless leader here at LINBIT CEO, Philip Reisner. Hey, Phil.
Hello, Michael. Thanks for making me the fearless leader.
So a quick note for everyone in the audience here in Zoom. You can join in the discussion if you'd like to. You can ask questions, share your thoughts. All you got to do is raise your hand with the raise your hand emoji in the chat. So let's get started. Our first question to the panelists is, have these events affected your business in any way? Let's start off with Phil.
I go first. Yes, they killed my schedule. So I have many meetings with partners, with prospects, and I'm explaining similar stories all the time. And it just happened this morning that I was sucked into a meeting for 2.5 hours and explaining a former or still VMware partner that was, I think, 700 CPU cores, VMware licensee, and they explained me that they will need to pay about the double amount. And it's not only that they are so pissed off that they have to pay double. They are really pissed off about this, let's say, treatment by VMware, Broadcom, whatever, this uncertainty, this how the news trickle in and disrupt everything. So, and my feeling I got from this conversation is this is mainly what pisses them off most. So, yes, it disrupts my what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So what's about you, Mark?
Well, yeah, for us as well, it has been a major disruption of our, let's say, our sleep night. So basically, we have seen like some kind of 30% increase in terms of people that are joining the community forum, but they are not only they are joining the forum, they're also way more involved into the community. They're engaging. We have a 60% increase in terms of people posting stuff. We have 100% in registration, 300% demo request on our website. So that's kind of crazy weeks, and those crazy weeks are becoming slowly crazy months. And yeah, all the story we got, or like that's, to be honest, that's really frightening because people are experiencing some kind of a price fall that goes from 5 to sometimes 9 or even 10 times the price they were paying before with VMware. So that's kind of crazy. And every week that passes, it looks like there is something new that is pushing more and more people to come to us. Yeah. So what about you, Alberto?
Here at OpenNebula, we are facing the very same situation. We have received an increase of our prospects, and for us, for example, in our webpage has been the best month in terms of new contributors, or the best month in signups, for example. For us, that has been a second best month for our user visits. And for example, we will have a webinar next week regarding the VMware, and which could be the best path to migrate from VMware to our solution. And we have received the very same amount of users in 3 days than in a regular webinar for a month of promotion. So the interest is there; it's obvious. And for us, for example, as a very funny tip, we could say that we have received around 5,000 views and 700 users asking for information or our price list. So it's something remarkable for sure.
This is something we cannot do with our own marketing budgets, right?
Well,
thank you, Broadcom.
We are clearly starting to automate our answers.
Yeah, in my opinion, it's something as you said, I mean, it's something that it's a huge opportunity, but it's a huge challenge, because I think we are facing a situation where the VMware users are trying to find a fully replacement of all the all the functions and features. And of course, we can find a way to let them have the most successful experience in their migration. But that's a huge challenge for all the solutions we have already. And it's something to think of it too, you know.
Yeah, I got really caught out because I thought I was being super smart. About a year ago, I predicted this was going to happen. And because CloudStack's multi-hypervisor, we're agnostic. We'd actually started to see movement on, sales and everything increasing because of this. But those conversations, I mean, this is going back sort of 6 months or so ago, those conversations were about people wanting to decouple their virtualization layer from their automation layer. And CloudStack's a perfect tool for that because it supports VMware and XCP-ng and KVM. And about half the projects we were working on, I suppose that was about Q3 last year, were related to that. I thought we'd handled this. And then the news came in at the turn of the year with the licensing changes, particularly around the CSP program. And we've just had this deluge, particularly service providers, right? Who are, and some of these guys, have built their business around the technology suite that, with vSphere and NSX and vCloud Director. Haven't really necessarily thought too much about how that all hangs together. They've just taken those products and started selling a service based on it. Suddenly, it's going to cost them $500,000+ a year to keep that service going, and they're running around with their hair on fire. So I expect Alberto, me, Marc-André, we're all going to have crazy busy pipelines at the moment.
Yeah, and I have the feeling there is a lot of education also to be covered, but because suddenly people that they were taking some VMware solution they were not even sometimes using, and suddenly they were asking themselves, okay, am I really using this product? Do I really need to have this kind of solution? And there is sometimes a bit of education to demonstrate that a solution which is simpler at some extent is not less effective, in fact.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. A number of these organizations, who are all, they're some of them pretty successful organizations, they've just taken what the vendor has put in front of them and then pushed that out as products. Now, if you're doing that in enterprise space, that's a different thing. But if you're building public services based on it, that's a concern. And I'm sure we'll get into talking about, is this good for open source? I'm sure that's coming later, but, a lot of these organizations have not really worked with any open source technologies in the past. So there's, as far as they're concerned, there's training, there's cultural issues they're going to have to address, but, most of them have no choice.
Because they were comfortable in a vendor lock-in situation. And this is the result we are facing now. It is exactly like this.
Yeah. Yeah,
absolutely.
Where you're betting on a vendor locking solution with no possibility to integrate, or no, maybe not possibility, maybe integration interest in other platforms.
Yeah.
That's the way to go. And it goes farther than just the software.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
Hardware solutions only compatible with VMware. And
Mm.
that's a huge thing. It's not only impacting the licensing prices, it's impacting the hardware chosen to run those infrastructures. For example, we have contacts with some telco providers and telco and big companies that they are facing just an increase of by 10 the amount of price, the price they will pay for the licenses.
Mm.
Now they have to invest, maybe change the whole infrastructure or maybe the storage because of it. So it's a huge thing for mostly all of them.
Yeah, well, one of the biggest challenges that we are trying to cover with virtualization management stack is the capabilities, because people, as you say, there is comfort into being into some kind of lock-in situation, because you don't have to think about what you're using. You don't have to build your solution. So when it comes to Vates VMS, we are trying to translate VMware project into a solution that are integrated into the ecosystem. That's the whole point of what we are doing with LINBIT since a few years, working on XOSTOR, integrating the DRDB solution within XCP-ng, is to grant people the capabilities to come into the open source solution world and still not have to think a lot about what they will have to build to create their infrastructure. It's to offer them the capabilities to come from a locked world to an open one, but with the same easy way to access the solutions.
Yeah. And I think in the enterprise space, Marc-André, I absolutely 100% agree. But I've spent the last 10 years of my life speaking to service providers and saying, if you're taking vendor products, you're effectively just reselling their products, right? My fear for them wasn't something like this commercially. My fear was where the technology would go, that they're tied to that technology, and they don't have the freedom. And I've spent so many years saying, look, if you don't want to use Apache Cloud, that's fine. Go and speak to Alberto, OpenNebula. Go and speak to somebody about OpenStack, right? They're open source technologies. Do not build a set of public customer-facing services based on a proprietary vendor thing.
Oh yeah, there is a lesson to learn with that. I agree. Open source, it's the way out of this kind of difficult financialization of big software vendor that are fully locked.
Yeah,
definitely.
So this is super interesting, and I wanted to go into what you were talking about, what they need to look into in terms of what's going to be like the technology that's going to fit them going forward. How would you describe the available open source hypervisors, orchestrators for users who are trying to go from the VMware world? Like, what guidelines can you think of to help a potential user choose what technology fits them best? Let's start with Alberto.
In our case, OpenNebula, we have always try to use be as open source as possible, and always offering our customers open standards to interoperate and to interface. So, for example, our solution is capable to run in HCSI or HPC environments. So sometimes it's not choosing the best technology, using the open standards as a way to rule everything. In our case, that's the way we go. And our bet is always in free software and solutions and technologies opened. The product we run and we build is based on that. So we support KVM as a regular basis. We are interfaces with VMware too, but the main focus is always in the KVM and Linux environments.
Nice, Giles. How would you answer that question?
I think people have to learn their lesson, right? They have to learn their lesson, and if you go and choose something proprietary that's closed source, this is going to happen, right? And people, people really need to get their heads around that. I think there is a very mature if we're talking just the hypervisor space, Marc-André, the guy is over at Vates. XCP-ng is a super hypervisor. KVM, lots of different distros of KVM, very, very good hypervisor. And then in the orchestration space, yeah, things like Apache CloudStack is there. And they've been around for some time. And I think people just need to make that cultural change in their heads. It's not necessarily more difficult doing it with open source, but you know, you shouldn't look and think, well, open source therefore isn't as mature and isn't as capable. There's been very stable hypervisor offerings, open source hypervisor offerings for a number of years now. This is nothing new.
That's true. For example, as you say, in terms of maturity, the product we run in the market around 15 years. And it has been designed to rule thousands of hypervisors.
Yeah.
In an open source scale. So it's not a question. It's not a question of being enough. It's a question of being open and being able to interface with other structures, third-party solutions, and that's the key of being open source.
Yeah, I think it's the whole key and the whole strength of open source is the ability to build an ecosystem with different projects that are doing many different things, and there is not one answer that fits all. This is the big lie of the lock-in solution. There is no a single solution that is able to cover every use case out there. And the beauty of open source is that it's easy to access, it's easy to test. You can basically try it. XCP-ng, you can download the ISO of XCP-ng. It's on the website. It's accessible. You don't have to register. You can deploy it, install it, and deploy Xenorchestra to handle it and try it. Just if you are not sure if the solution, and we are fully, it's an acceptable solution for us. We are not trying to cover 100% of the use case. We are trying to answer the people that are actually in the same, in the kind of infrastructure that we are trying to address. So yeah, the beauty of open source is you can try, you can deploy, you can, and if it's does not fit, you can just ditch it. That's it. You're not locked, you're not blocked, you don't have to pay to try, you don't, it's there.
And having an open code base is a massive safety valve for any organization, right? So, you know, look at what happened with HashiCorp recently with Terraform, and they've, you know, subtly tried to do some stuff so they can start to make a bit more money, which is fair enough. You know, they're a commercial organization, but it's an open code base. Bang, it's forked, right? So people can now choose, do they want the HashiCorp route or do they want other routes? That to me is the ultimate safety net with technology.
That's a huge safeguard. You know, I mean, we did that with at Vates. We forked XenServer. That was back in 2018. Citrix XenServer was taking a road we were not agreeing with in the terms of financialization, and the business model they were adopting was diverging from the open source ecosystem we were trying to build. So we decided to fork, and that's it. That's the safeguard. If you're not happy with the financial decision of this company, of the company that was building the project, you can still fork it, and the project is still there. The code is not going anywhere. It continue to work as long as there is people to maintain it or to develop around it. So that's a safeguard, insane safeguard.
And if Vates ever did something crazy like get bought by Broadcom, which I'm not sure isn't going to happen, but that's the point, right? You know, that safety valve is there.
That's actually something we have at our core DNA, because we know that people have joined our project after being betrayed basically by their previous solution provider. So by crafting every decision we are making that is related to Vates VMS, to XCP-ng and to Xenorchestra, every decision we are making it because, and with the community needs and requests and expectation in mind, because they are ultimately the core of the project. And if you don't have a community in the community project, you don't have a project.
So you know, the LINBIT SDS is available for a few orchestrators, as you are here, and also for Proxmox, who is not here today. So when I talk to current VMware users that want to switch, they often tell us where should we go, right? So it's always a hard question for me. And then I try to tell them, okay, look, probably the easiest to set up, that's Proxmox. I tell them if you have something with desktop virtualization, you're probably in very good hands when you go with XCP-ng. If you need something where you can very easily hook in your business processes, right? I tell them OpenNebula might be where you should look first. And if it's about the big things and you're building a big cloud, there's multiple zones, etc., I tell them, look, Apache CloudStack has, to my knowledge, most of these problems covered. But so I'm here in a position saying, yeah, these are the hypervisors where LINBIT SDS is integrated in at the moment, and also overt, or OpenStack, but I have a much harder time to. Well, I never recommend those two.
Philip, can I ask you a question? You
Yes,
say at
please.
the beginning, this has made a big difference to you and lots of activity. Why? Why? You're at the storage layer, right? Why with the disruption at the virtualization layer is that having a positive effect on you? I think I could probably guess, but I'll be interested to hear what you think it is.
Yeah, when we talk about VMware users, we usually think of the hypervisor first. But the VMware product landscape is so much bigger, and people are having, it's called VxRail, I think. So
Yeah.
that's a bundle of the hypervisor plus software-defined storage and software-defined network,
An extremely expensive environment. Yes.
Sorry.
An extremely expensive environment. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I cannot. I don't know about that, but at that point they find out, okay, they also need to have software-defined storage, and when it comes to software-defined storage, people find Ceph and LINBIT, fortunately, and yes, so in many conversations, it's quite easy for me to convince people that LinStore and dbd is a better fit for them, and then I'm in the conversation. And in the moment you establish a little bit of trust, you get the question, which hypervisor should we go? And then I tell them I love them all.
Very diplomatic.
As long as they are open source.
Well, I and with them I refer to you guys.
I'd like to add on the LINBIT situation on our side. Many people that are coming to see us from the VMware environment, they're looking to migrate their virtualization platform, but they are very often they are using vSAN. And the product we are developing together, XOStore, that's basically an alternative to vSAN. So for us, I think that's probably the main reason why DRBD can be disrupted, because they need to migrate everything. They cannot keep their vSAN because it's a VMware product. It only works with VMware, obviously.
Yeah, that's true.
The other big vendor here in this area is Veeam, because it seems like virtually every VMware user uses Veeam as well, right?
It's in the marketplace. Yeah, absolutely. And it's something. It's one of the things that's when people are sending us through their massive list of requirements, which is basically all the stuff they've had with VMware, it's always there. It's always there.
Yeah, for us.
And it seems that disruption also goes back to Veeam, right? Apparently, they have now the question, oh, if VMware is going away, our product hangs in the air, right? So
well, they've rushed out Proxmox support, I think, because of this situation. I spoke to them. We've had a couple of calls in the last few weeks, and lots and lots of people like me, I'm sure Alberto and his colleagues are in their ear at the moment saying, okay, all right, you need to work on some integration here. And I think they've got a backlog.
Yes, we have received interest in integration capabilities with Veeam too. I mean, in our case, we are facing situations where they want to migrate maybe 6, 7 different locations composed by maybe 100 of hypervisors. OpenNebula is fully federated. It's fully multi-zone support. It's able to support around thousands of hypervisors per zone, fully federated. So it's built for those scales and to build in HCI environments. But yes, in our case, for example, we received a lot of interest to integrate with Veeam too, because as you say, it's tied up. And as we are facing a proprietary world, and they are coming with all sorts of proprietary solutions. So it's going to be a challenge to maybe replace them or integrate with proprietary solutions too.
Yeah, and I mean, this is ultimately is Veeam's problem, right? They don't have any integration with XCP or with pure KVM, as in libvirt KVM. I think they've got some stuff via overt, so they just don't support those hypervisors. So it's almost not a CloudStack or an OpenNebula problem. It's a what hypervisors Veeam support, right? And that's changing.
Yeah. On our side, the experience has been little bit different because in Xenorchestra we have already a quite complete backup solution embed. So for people that are coming from the VMware world, most of the time they're like, oh, I can replace my backup solution as well. So that's great. But there is a few instances of people that are really looking to keep Veeam because they're happy with the solution and they have some warranty and stuff like that. So yeah, that's ultimately indeed Veeam problem. But in our case, it has been the backup side has been less disruptive, I think.
Yeah. In our case, we built our own backup solution based on open standards to business ready solutions that are all over the place, every distribution, and we always bet for technological agnosticism. So we support all distributions as much as we can, and we always base the product using open source and free software solutions too. So. Of course, the Veeam solution has to be there, but we recommend to move on too, because at the end it will tie up the whole solution again.
Which is exactly what we're doing. But I think one of the problems is, Alberto, is that mindset thing again. You've got people who have come from a vendor dominated landscape, and backup is something they're very sensitive around, and they've often used the brand that is Veeam with their customers.
Because they are facing sometimes like, oh, we need to support all sorts of encryption and all sorts of features, and that's okay. But I mean, security by obscurity, that's the proprietary way of thinking, right? So we have to fight those walls, and it's difficult, especially from customers that are too used to buy boxes that they have some kind of hands and they install that by themselves, and you have a perfect GUI to deal with it, right?
Is there anything that's currently trying to be an alternative to Veeam, like an open source option, or is it just like its own island?
There's loads of backup tech, proprietary, and there's some open source ones. I think Veeam, like Philip said at the beginning, had just got themselves nestled in nicely with the V Suite. It became the default option. That was their sort of strong go to market. But yeah, from a technology viewpoint, there's lots of different options. I mean, we have an open backup framework with lots of different integrations, but it's just, when you've got petabytes of stuff in an existing backup platform and your customers have probably interacted directly with that platform, it's a big change. But it's again a mindset, cultural change as opposed to a technology thing.
Definitely, sometimes it's a mind barrier. It's just that, and you have to demonstrate that you cover 80% of the main features they need. And where you were able to store the backup and the regular backup life cycle. That's all.
Yeah, it's back to the first question again. I mean, a lot of people are not using the full capabilities of Vim, and they just need a fraction of the what Vim is capable of. So there is lots of solutions that are able to handle most of the backup scenario that are expected from industry around the world. So it's only a matter of education. I mean.
Yes, we support, for example, RESTIC and rsync backup, and we are able to store the data in S3 or dedicated repos. Depends on the solutions, but there is always a way to customize. That's the good thing of being open source.
Yeah, and we can also collaborate to integrate different stuff. We are using for encryption. We are using open algorithm that are to create encryption. We are compatible with Extra Backup and all that stuff. And we make a lot of things by collaborating with other open source solutions that could fit into an environment or into any customer's environment.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Nice. So we were talking earlier about trust. Philip mentioned that specifically about people having to know whether they're put their trust in their technology. And a lot of people have put their trust in VMware for a long time. And apparently this trust was disrupted by Broadcom's acquisition. What can you tell the new users about their new technology environment when they finally decide what they're going with?
In relation to
so start with
trust element.
The relations. Yeah, in relation to the trust, in relation to like the technology in general, but also the trust factor because of how much VMware people were trusting VMware and how this affects them in such a degree. Giles, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean it's massive. In fact, some of the people we're working with now actually technically commercially could stay with VMware, but they've gone, no, we're done there. You don't try and do that to us. And it's almost a point of principle with some of them. I mean, to be fair, they're probably people who have been looking at these sort of risks for some time and using open source to mitigate that, right? I think, yeah, is it a trust thing? I mean, sort of, you know, I mean, this has been brewing for a year since this acquisition was known about. People just sat there. They just sat. Well, a lot of people just sat there and just waited. So arguably got themselves to blame. But you know, businesses do change direction. You know, commercially, if they want to remodel, that's sort of their prerogative. If you're going to build a business 100% around a proprietary vendor's technology, this is the sort of risk that's going to happen. So I'm sorry, I'm trying to be defensive there of the situation that Broadcom and VMware have created. I find it hard to be. Yeah, I mean there is a massive trust issue, and also this uncertainty issue as well. This craziness with the new partner program that you summarized at the beginning, Michael, where people didn't know if they were going to be invited into the program. I think there's some who still don't. And that's really no way to treat customers, right? You know, that's really, you know, corporate greed over responsibility in my eyes. But as I said earlier, if you have the open source emergency button, which is an open code base, that problem goes away. So I wouldn't have thought any of the people who are speaking here have any trust issues in their software because it's an open code base, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Phil, what do you think?
Yeah, yeah, you know, this is a question where all the answers will be in about the same line, but let me put it in my words. So it is, I tell them, you know, open source cannot go away. Yeah, unlike to a corporate that gets bought by someone else and then changes direction. And an open source project keeps alive as long as the last user keeps the light on, right? And there's an example for that. I ran into this earlier this year. It's Ganeti. Probably no one remembers about Ganeti. Ganeti was also an orchestrator for virtual machines. I think it started at Google, and then Google lost interest, and some people keep it alive on, I don't know, GitHub or somewhere else. And yes, they're users. And those users, when I talk to them and there's a DVD 8.4 integration, they tell me, oh yeah, someone is keeping the light on. So it's it's like ported to newer Linux distributions, etc. So what I'm saying is, if you bet on open source, it's not going. There is no event that can make it go away, right? In the worst case, it will be forked. So, dear VMware user coming, I have good news for you. This is the last technology change you need to do because someone else decided that you need to go to change your technology. So that's my words about this.
Yeah. My point of view, it's always the easiness of change and customizing and integration. At the end, in OpenNebula, it's what we are experts. So we are agnostic in technology. We are used to study all sorts of technologies around, the more open and the more fully open source as we can, especially to mitigate those risks. At the end, what happens here is that when you trust proprietary solutions, you put a lot of things on someone else's head. And we're facing a business decision that it's impacting technology. But when technology is based on open source, we are talking about a very different situation, because everything is there for you to change it, to customize it, to use it internally, to be free to change it too, and to ask for support too, for the ones who were designing it, or ask for the community to. In our case, we are very committed to the community, and we try to provide support through the forums and using through our user community to improve and to be able to interface with other systems. So that's something very important. Not feeling that you're the only one who's using the technology and facing problems, and share them and try to repair them by your own, or in a team, or through your support. That's the main thing. Open source is not always something you download out of the box. You have a team there who are experts in technology, of the things they develop and the things they use for you to change. That's the main thing. In this case, what I think is that sometimes it's something that they don't know, they don't go further. They're used to buy everything in a box, and that's all. And open source is support too. It's everything tied up like that.
Yeah, of course I'm in line with everyone when it comes to the open source aspect of things. Another point I would like to just to bring something to the discussion, is to not put all your eggs in the same basket. If you are giving the key of your infrastructure to a proprietary software, and you are creating a huge dependence on their solution, then at some point you had it coming. You cannot just give all the access and everything and rely entirely on a solution that you don't control, and that you don't know what will happen in the future with that solution. So there is ways of mitigating this kind of risk. You can use different solutions within your same infrastructure, assuming you're large enough to have a different solution, but you can run different things into your infrastructure in case you have an issue with one of the technology provider you're working with. In case a business decision is hurting part of your infra, you have ways, because we are experiencing people right now at Vates that are coming, they need urgently to migrate because they are at risk. Actually, they cannot renew their existing subscription with VMware because their pricing has been up to 7 times what they were paying before. They are not profitable anymore. But all their business were basically relying on that infrastructures. They were 100% dependent of business decision made by a company that basically didn't absolutely care for them because they were too small for them. So yeah, just try different stuff, have different technology, do some kind of technological awareness, to try solution and train your people on different stuff, because at some point you cannot just grant all your business access, or you cannot rely on a single technology provider.
I think it's I mean, one thing that big traditional vendors are very good at doing is packaging their product. I don't mean packaging in from a software perspective, but packaging it with professional services, with training, with reseller channels, with partners, all of these things. So it's very, and amazing detailed documentation and pre-sale support, etc. And often with open source, that isn't as advanced, right? Because we haven't got the deep pockets of a vendor, so people have to think more at the beginning. But I would say it's, as you're saying, Marc-André, it's just sort of risk mitigation in an organization. You're putting all of your eggs in that one basket. It's crazy, absolutely crazy.
Yeah, I mean, there's the trust factor of people putting in it is more of like trusting them to not ruin what they're relying on, not necessarily that they're doing the right thing in this. But in this case, I think you covered it very well, and in the open source aspect is a very key point. But we were talking about hypervisors for a lot of this, and hypervisors alone is not the whole solution. So often network functionality and storage functions are an important part of the solution. What is your perception of competing software-defined storage and networking offerings for your technology? Let's just have this an open table, so whoever wants to go first can go ahead.
I think in our point of view, in OpenNebula, we face both the scenarios. It depends always on the use case. Facing HCI environments, sometimes it's more cost effective because you face a situation where you want to deploy storage and compute power using the same nodes, and depends on where you want to settle that infrastructure. Edge computing is an example of HCI configurations, going to disaggregated environments where you have the compute and storage totally isolated. Sometimes it could be cost effective too, depending on how many virtual machines we're running and what kind of clouds are you running. So the main thing is choosing a tool that it's able to manage both use cases, or whatever use cases you want, and being able to customize it.
On our side, we understand very well that people are not looking for an hypervisor solution. They are not looking for an hypervisor. They're looking for a virtualization platform that works. And they just want a solution that is working. That's why we are trying, and we are talking less and less about XCP-ng at Vates, because we are talking more and more about Vates virtualization management stack. And XCP-ng itself is not exactly an hypervisor. It's a virtualization platform because it already comes with an API. The hypervisor for us, it's the car engine. You need it, of course, you need the car engine. And if this car engine, it needs to be reliable, of course. But in the end, you want a car. So you want the full stack that come with it. You want the solution that will administrate. You want the backup that will work on top of it. You want the storage solution. You want the network solution. You want everything that will work, even if it's in the open source world, even if you have the choice and you can build your own car. At some point, you want a car, not just the engine. So yeah, that's all the point of what we are doing at Vates with LINBIT. Again, I am talking a lot about it, but what we're building with LINBIT and XOSTOR, it's the capabilities of people to get everything they need in a single ecosystem. They want a virtualization stack, and we want to be able to provide them all the answers they're looking for without having to search a lot in order to build their infrastructures, because they want, most of the time, they still want the key of the car and the car itself. They don't want to build the door and the engine and stuff like that. And of course, this is our vision, and there is multiple vision. It's for some instruments, having the capabilities to build from scratch everything. That's awesome to be able to do that, and it will fit a lot of situation. What we are addressing at Vates, it's more people that are looking for something very similar in a term of architecture of what they have with VMware today, something built as a stack.
In my point of view, for example, we are used to build all the software defined services and networking and compute power, and our service OpenNebula Cloud Engine using commodity hardware. So there is no restriction in what kind of hardware provider you want to use. At the end, you're free to use whatever you want, and you're able to build it from scratch. In our case, we are not only a virtual environment, a virtual machine orchestration. We are a cloud stack.
Careful, that's a trademark.
Yes, sorry, a cloud management orchestration, right? So at the end, we have the API. We manage all those platforms. We manage all those features for the customers to integrate with us or to integrate with other platforms too. You know, so at the end, it is facing a way to free the users in terms of what do you want to choose, and not choosing just one dealer because they offer you the software too. You're tied up to the package they are selling to you, right?
I think on the I've got to say something here about software-defined storage, because it lets me get my revenge on Philip for earlier. So Philip sat there and said, "Hey, we don't care. Chat to those guys; they're better at that. Chat to those guys better at that. We're agnostic, right?" And from a CloudStack viewpoint, we're agnostic around the different storage types, whether it's block or object storage or what have you. We support anything that the underlying hypervisor supports. One trend we do see is people moving to software defined, right? But I suppose in a way, not necessarily the best people to comment, because what we see is often cycles in terms of storage selection and in terms of orchestration platform selection are actually different. Everybody assumes these are all being decided at the same time. And one thing we've got with CloudStack is this very tightly defined scope. So we don't say you have to replace your storage. So they're often on different cycles, but we see a move towards software-defined storage, definitely. And that has some parallels to the whole open source thing in terms of, you know, you're not tying yourself into overpriced hardware, etc. I know a particular vendor who happens to be here. We see quite a lot of traction with LINBIT, but there are other technologies as well. Others are available, Philip. Sorry.
Yeah, so someone needs to name the red elephant in the room. Is it the red elephant? No.
Maybe we should talk about Ceph. How about that?
Right. Yes. So I was hoping that I get something from you, from the, let's say, orchestrator hypervisor perspective, saying, oh yeah, we see 50-50. LINBIT is a fit, Ceph is a fit, whatever. So from my point of view, I'm of course completely biased. I think what we do is the best in the world, and Ceph is really trash. Seriously. No, in my point of view, Ceph is a kind of object store, and for virtual machines you need block storage, and then emulating block storage on top of this object storage. Nah, that's a violation of the layers. That's just getting.
Does that make you uncomfortable, Philip?
Yeah, it makes me uncomfortable. It's just a terrible idea. and yes, what we do at LINBIT is less than what Ceph is doing, because Ceph does 3 things, but none of them right. So it is object storage, is a block storage, and is a file storage. So we only do block, but I think, no, I'm convinced we do it right. And when I look at some of my competitors, like Portworx, they have about the same points on their slides. If I had a slide deck which was a mock-off of the Portworx slide deck, yeah. So I was hoping to get some controversial stuff from you guys.
Yes.
Well, I mean, one of the things we do see with storage is there's a lot of inertia, and I really wouldn't want to be be a salesman in your organization, because I know that's a long sales cycle,
Yes.
right? In terms of storage, there's a lot of organizational inertia around, and that's from relationships with vendors and discounts and knowledge in an organization as well. You know, I think it's hard to disrupt with storage, right? It's hard to disrupt, not from a technology viewpoint, but from an organizational viewpoint.
But what I can give you as feedback is from these people who are ready now to leave VMware behind them. You know, they are so, yeah. One guy told me he got the letter from VMware that they are canceling the thing, and he said he couldn't believe it. It's like, I'm not taking this serious, and put it away. and now he's in such a, let's say, state of mind where I say, okay, and I'm kicking out the SAN as well.
Yeah.
Because yes, it's proprietary in the same way as VMware is, right? And so he is now really looking at what is Ceph doing, what is LINBIT doing. And of course, I convinced him for the right side.
Yes, it's the most difficult platforms to integrate with, as they are the SAN and fiber channel. That's why we think we can maybe suggest or maybe suitable configurations to use that, but not so. I still thinking that we will have to deal with the situation where some proprietary platforms have these. They put a bet on those proprietary solutions. They have to face that, and for example, in terms of LINBIT, we find it very useful software solution for HCI environments, for example. It's really easy. The complexity and the amount of components you need to make it work are by far easier and more stable. So it depends in the use case for sure. But it's a huge wall we have to break. In our case, for example, we made several migration paths for VMware users, and for definitely that's the most difficult and scenario to migrate, SAN with fiber channel, because it was designed specifically for VMware, and unfortunately the engine has not been rebuilt, and we cannot do any reverse engineering of that VMFS thing, right?
Yeah, we have kind of the same problem, because we have a migration tool from VMware, so you can migrate VM that are coming from a VMware environment to XCP-ng environment, and we even developed what we call warm migration that allows us to minimize the shutdown of the VMware infrastructure before booting up on the XCP-ng one. And we cannot do that on a vSAN installation because everything is different and everything is proprietary. So it's very difficult. So the workaround we have is we ask people, you need to move your vSAN environment and go into something like an NFS storage, something, and then you can migrate your VM from the vSAN environment. And storage in general, it's complicated. It's also related to how critical the data are for any infrastructure. So it's a big choice, and the logic that are applied with different technology, VMware or any other solution of virtualization out there, there is different logic, different approach, and people, they have their habits. So they like to use ISKZ, they like to use NFS, they like to use, and maybe it's not the right fit with another technology, and you have to apply a different logical thinking to it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Sometimes you have to face for a migration where they do not want to change that SAN, and at the end, maybe suggesting maybe 70% usable infrastructure based on that will be a nice fit too. No, not all customers will be able to invest in another storage solution without the current one being amortized, for example. So that's a business thing too, not only licenses.
Earlier, Alberto, you were talking about HCI, and I wanted to kind of pull on that thread a little bit. So for those who are not familiar, hyperconverged infrastructure, or HCI, or VxRail for VMware users, or disaggregated. Like, these are the options we have, right? So where would you say that the architectures Like, do you support both architectures? Which architecture do you see as the most often used, and the pros and cons sort of stuff? Like, let's talk about that. So, Alberto, what would you say in regards to these questions? Pros and cons, what kind of architectures are best supported?
For us, in terms of cloud environments and infrastructure, we can perceive a huge interest in edge computing. So I wouldn't say this is a general rule, but mostly all edge cloud environments are based on HCI. Mostly all of them, because they are smaller points of presence for infrastructure, and HCI is the common configuration. So that's why mostly the amount of components you can put on the edge are restricted, or you have less space to put everything in place, or the compute power you have available is not enough, or maybe it's tight in resources. So HCI could fit very well in those situations. I've seen HCI in data centers too. So it's a bit difficult, for example, because VxRail, which is one of the most terrible solutions ever sell in the world, in my opinion. It's extremely expensive. It's a very well-performant environment, but it is so expensive that I was absolutely surprised by someone who was able to choose and pay for that. And at the end, they were not able to expand the HCI because each node was around maybe 30,000 euros, something like that. So just for that, I mean, adding to an HCI structure, sometimes you need to put in place lots of resources. So it depends sometimes. In my point of view, data center and the amount of the size of your cloud will lead you to the correct way. Sometimes HCI is not the best suit for a large scale environments. And disaggregated compute and storage could be a best fit for maintainability or resilience or scaling and cost-effective virtual machine costs, right?
And from a Apache CloudStack viewpoint, it's the same answer. At the edge, yes. In the data center, no. You want the modularity that HCI takes away. In terms of if you're running things at scale long term, keeping things deconverged is, in our opinion, the better way to go.
Mark,
on our side, it's kind of different because, of course, we are handling the storage with the virtualization platform with XCP-ng. So our focus over the last year has been to develop conjointly with LINBIT a solution for hyperconvergence that is built in XCP-ng itself to handle the hyperconvergence. So it's basically what people that are coming from vSAN are expecting to see, and we are seeing more and more people that are coming from the VMware world that are using that at some extent. And we are actually this is still something that is in beta, but the project itself is scheduled to be released like this month maybe, or at worst next month. Yes, please, Philippe. we are tinkering the last remaining things around that. So yeah, we are getting to that, and we are really proud of what we achieved, because we think it will be in the end a very reliable solution to do HCI using the LINBIT solution within XCP-ng and without having to bid by yourself on something very integrated and turnkey. So that's really great. But of course, most of the installation we have right now, there are people with shared storage, and they are disaggregated installation basically. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I can add most common in the data center is disaggregated. So I saw from, I don't know, 2 storage nodes to 16, 20 storage nodes, and then with a huge load of compute nodes attached to that. But I have seen one data center where they did HCI, and the story behind it is pretty interesting. The provider was able to get, I think, some blade systems, and the vendor was like discontinuing this hardware. So he got these blade systems for a really good price. And so he put the drive on the blades. And I think it's many hundred nodes, like 600 nodes, something like that. And he used that as a big HCI system for virtualization and containers. So from LINBIT point of view, one cluster. So both is possible, and I agree 100% in the edge cases is most of the time HCI. And I see a question in the chat.
Yep, we have a Zoom question, which is, can a 2-node cluster be built with your environments?
Yeah, so let me answer this from the LINBIT perspective, and then I let the others add to that. So the strict answer is yes, but if it's really only 2 nodes, you lose this quorum algorithm on the storage side, and that's a very important thing to keep the cluster safe in case there's a network in case the cluster is partitioned into 2 parts. So I always really recommend to have a 3rd node, and the 3rd node doesn't need to have the storage and it does not need to have compute power. So literally, you can add a Raspberry Pi as the 3rd node. So, yes. Alberto, Marc, Giles, do you want to?
Is that your production grade recommendation for this?
I mean, come on. If it's about 100 clusters in branch offices or in edge locations, and they're all 2 nodes and they're 2 machines, then come on. Put the Raspberry Pi as a 3rd node. You know, if the Raspberry fails, no problem. It's 2 nodes online. If one of the big nodes fails, no problem. It's the other one and the Raspberry. So it's just two out of 3 need to run, right?
From the official viewpoint, yes, you can build a 1 node, although it wouldn't be a cluster, Apache CloudStack environment. But that's a very small environment, and you're going to be having a lot of duplicated functions on those 2 clusters. But yeah, absolutely possible.
Yes, it is absolutely possible to build a fully ready cloud environment on the edge with only 2 nodes. It's recommended to have a 3rd one to be as a tiebreaker, so you can use whatever device you want. Business ready, please. Or maybe you can ask for you can use another node using remote communication, for example, as a way to have a fully extended network that can be reached. For example, you can use those solutions as far as you have a 3rd node reachable from the infrastructure you want to build. That's fine.
On Vate's point of view, my answer will be necessarily very close from what said Philip. Well, if you can run XCP-ng on your Raspberry Pi, there is a slight chance we support it. But otherwise, in a production environment, we would require 3 hosts, not because of technical limitation, but because you want to avoid absolutely the split brain scenario that could occur if you lose a single host and you lost the core. So yeah, 3 is the way.
It depends on what kind of features you want to run. Obviously, for example, if you're using those 2 nodes only for local storage, it won't be necessary, strictly necessary, to have like a live migration or call migration. You can do that. You can face all sorts of features, and depends on the storage you want to build in that scenario. If you want to have live migration based on a shared file system, or you want to use a local storage using each node, of course it is feasible.
They had a follow-up question actually in the Zoom chat from the same person who says, if we put a witness appliance in a 3rd site, is there a bandwidth requirement?
I take it first. So no, it's the bandwidth requirement is very, very, very low. So it exchanges a packet here and there. That's it. So
because at the end, it doesn't belong to the data path. So
it doesn't belong to the data path. So it's, yeah. So an
Nice.
ESDN line would be an overkill.
Nice. All right. So that I think that answers their questions for the Zoom. Also, let's talk about go back to the topic about VMware. So this might be creating some kind of counter trend, and I wanted to see, does the panel people, do y'all see any counter trend happening from people moving to the cloud? Like, for example, let's talk about the public cloud versus the private cloud.
Well, that's a really good question, because that's another movement we've seen for the last year or so. Is we call it repatriation. Is people waking up and going, oh, we're spending too much, we're giving too much of our bottom line to Amazon or to Google. I don't think, my gut feeling is I don't think these things are going to be intertwined. I think they're almost sort of two separate movements that are going on. The decision to put workloads in public cloud or take them back out and repatriate them, I think is a different set of economics and different conversation to then what technology, or the fact you've had a vendor do some wonky stuff in your data center. So I would think there wouldn't be a correlation there, but somebody might have a different opinion.
I think there is a trend in this topic. There is a trend of several businesses that thinking coming back and putting everything on premise or in their own data centers because of regulatory compliance or geolocation. You want to have your data based on the country you're running, or security considerations are required by legal or regulatory laws. Lots of different situations, and I think overall the main reason could be the costs. Sometimes running your infrastructure, and the more you move, the more you will pay. And sometimes when you choose a public environment or public cloud provider, where lots of those solutions are to vendor lock-in too. You are using their own platform as a service or software as a service solutions. They are pretty costly sometimes. So they are facing that maybe they could save some costs using open source cloud orchestration environments to deploy their own infrastructure and coming back on premise or in their own data centers. So, or running them on the edge, for example. So yes, the trend is there for sure.
But it's not a binary thing, right? I think, a few years ago, we saw this inevitable march to the hyperscalers. When we say cloud, we mean we mean the big three hyperscalers. And there's definitely, I think that has topped their market share has topped out. So yeah, people repatriating into their own data centers, but also the diversification of the service provider space, right? There's more, like you're saying, Alberto, regulatory reasons. We've had all those things for a long time. A lot of those are really starting to become apparent now, but then the cost thing. So it won't just be about people pulling it back and building their own, choosing smaller service providers, not just putting I mean, Amazon, Google, Microsoft are here to stay. They've got some great services, and I don't think there'll be many organizations who won't be using a bit of some of their services. But for the backbone of heavyweight data storage, the heavyweight processing, is that the right place to be going forward? No, not necessarily.
On my side, I think there is the trend. There is a trend. I even think it's called revirtualization, something like that. For people that are coming back from the cloud to recreating their own data center and their own infrastructures in-house, or creating a hybrid environment. As you say, there is no definitive coming back. Or I think there is, as usual with new technology, there is some kind of enjoyment at the beginning, and everyone thinks that's the solution, that's the miracle solution. And in the end, they are slowly learning. But contrary to the VMware situation where we are experiencing like a tsunami, for the people that are coming back from the cloud, it looks like more like smaller waves that are coming from different aspects. There is the security aspect, because the public cloud has been and has revealed not as safe as it was expected in the first place. There is the regulation aspect, because in Europe especially we have rules that are more constraints about the regulation and stuff like that, so the RGPD and stuff. There is a sovereignty. That's very different topic, and people are not affected by each of them. They are affected by one of them. They are coming back because they are learning that there is finally the cloud is not the magical thing that relieves you from having any infrastructures. You don't have any machine, any hardwares. There is no more security constraint because you don't have any CPU, right? You don't have hardware, so there is no security in the game. So yeah, they're learning that it's not exactly that there is still an infrastructure underneath, and this infrastructure has a cost. And yes, sure, there is a situation in which it will fit your business environment because you need the capabilities of scalability that only the cloud is able to provide. But most of the time, you probably don't need that level of scalability, and it comes at a cost. And people are learning the cost right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's all the questions I have. Thank you so much. And I want to get some closing thoughts for you. So I guess the final question will be, VM, where do they go from here?
Sorry, I didn't get it. I didn't got it. Sorry.
So my question was, VM, where do we go from here?
Okay, you should not try this kind of joke with people that are not speaking English as a native language, you know?
Noted.
Get it.
Where does VMware go, or do people using VMware go?
I
mean, either way, whatever.
I think VMware are going to have, we've already seen a much smaller product portfolio focused on the really big enterprise clients that they can squeeze money out of. I think the hypervisor general virtualization space, that particularly in enterprise, has been heavily VMware focused for most of my career. We're going to see that change over the next, and that's going to take a long time, right? But if you're pulling free versions of things that people are putting in labs age 21, if they're not doing that anymore and they're using Marc-André's technology, or they're using KVM instead, that's what that next generation are going to go by. And then you'll see the ecosystem spring up around the other hypervisors.
Yeah, it will take time to move on, for sure. But it's something that I don't think it will be unstoppable from now on.
Yeah, I think thanks to Broadcom, there is like a big opportunity for open source itself. It's a breath in the market. It's opportunities to develop new technology. It's capabilities to enjoy and try and use many different solutions. So anywhere you go after VMware, go into the open source world. That's the main point.
For me, what I like the most is that for decades we were expecting being looked by corporations and businesses, all sorts of them, to cooperate with them. So at the end, it will be good for the open source or all the solutions they are running right now, because at the end they will grow, they will improve, they will develop new features. It will be something positive. So I think it will be good.
Yeah, VMware user, you're suffering right now, but there is hope for tomorrow.
Yes, you're right.
The tsunami is started, but you may be able to get a boat to ride the wave, you know.
Let's surf it the best way we can, right?
Yeah, exactly. So thank you all for joining us for the LINBIT community meeting, the special edition of it. And if for anybody who's watching, if you have any questions you didn't able to get a chance to ask it, you can post your questions in the YouTube comments, or you can contact the LINBIT experts directly at linbit.com. Also, be sure to like and subscribe to the LINBIT YouTube channel to learn more about us and our software and our partners. And you also check out the description for this particular stream, and we'll have the links for all of our partners here joining us. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in just a LINBIT.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Well, bye.
Good to see you guys.
Good to see you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you for